Welcome to All Out in the Open. We are so glad you're here. We have a special episode. It's one of our Out and About series with Iese Wilson, where he takes us on a tour of the LGBTQ plus experience globally through the church. And this week he interviewed Liv Mendoza Haynes.
Her name is actually Jessica Livier Mendoza de la Vega Haynes.
It's like Esteban Julio Ricardo.
Exactly. So we're going to Mexico, and this is a really special episode because Liv talks about how she was raised Catholic, joins the church, and then the word I would say describes this episode is merge, and how she merged her.
Oh, cool.
She merges her past with her present, like merges her faith and like her identity as a Mexican, and also a Mexican who lives in the States and married to an American man. It's a beautiful episode, and I think you'll learn a ton.
That is the word merge. I love that, and we hope you like merging with her story. Did you see how I did that?
I did.
Welcome, everybody, to Out and About. I'm your host, Iese Wilson, and as you can tell, I'm in really bright moods. I've just been laughing and just having some of the deepest conversations already with our guests before we even gotten on air. Today, we are traveling to Mexico once again, but this time to hear a perspective of a queer woman. It's one of those perspectives that, like, I feel we don't hear enough of queer women in the first place, but now we're a queer woman of color, and our guest today is a dear friend who just has a mind that is so fascinating, is so clear. She has a degree in law, and you may know her from the 2021 BYU Women's Conference, where she was, I believe, the first person to actually use the term queer on stage on a church platform. She is in a mixed orientation marriage and has two wonderful children. You probably know her. We all love her. Today we're going to have Liv Mendoza Haynes with us today. So Liv, bienvenidos and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Iese. Thank you. And thank you for having me, for opening up this space for voices like mine and of many others that we just want to share our experience and help people see the world through our eyes, even if it's for a little bit, to help them enhance and widen their own world. And yeah, so a little bit about me beyond what you already shared. I grew up in Mexico. I was born in California. I am not a fake Mexican. That's a story that we can go into detail at another time. But long story short, I didn't know I was an official Mexican until I was 14. So that's an interesting fact about me. I'm the youngest of three. My parents have been happily married for 100 years, and if not close to that. And they're actually staying with me right now, which I'm very grateful for. I'm a convert to the church. I was baptized in December 2010. So I'm on my 15-year anniversary. Do I get a Neldies quinceañera? I think I should. I think I should.
I'll see
I'm
what we can do about that.
And yeah, it has been a very interesting journey to understand what it is to be a queer woman of color in the church. First, in my experience with meeting the church in Mexico and being a convert there, and then moving to Utah and experiencing the church from a different perspective, and also navigating my parents. My dad is not a member of the church. He's still super extremely Catholic. My mom is technically, well, she is a member because she was baptized, but she's very, very Catholic as well. And yeah, I usually tell people that I am a progressive LDS with a sprinkle of Catholic still in me. And I'm just really happy to be here and talk a little bit about my experience.
I think you bring up already some really cool and interesting points. I think talking about like having a sprinkle of Catholicism due to like syncretism and colonization. Like in for a lot of Mexican people to be Catholic is to be Mexican. Is that what your upbringing is like? What does that look like for you?
My family was extremely Catholic. Like, we're talking, there's a little chapel in my house. We have statues of Lady of Guadalupe that are almost at my size. I mean, I'm not a very tall person, but still, like a 5 feet statue. I remember, I don't know if you're, I think the name in English is Jesus Bleeding Heart. So it's this painting of Jesus with like the
Uh-huh.
heart in the middle and the thorns around and stuff. That was like a huge frame watching us eat every day. I went to Catholic school. A lot of photos of mine growing up are dressed up as either one of the many versions of Mary. But to me, I was always bookworm, I think is the phrase,
Uh-huh.
and I loved history. And I always thought it was very interesting. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but in Mexico, when the Spanish came, they tried to, well, not tried, they imposed Catholicism through many ways. The indigenous people found ways to still revere their own idols, and to this day they still find like figures of Catholic symbolism, and then when they break them, inside there's figures of our ancient gods.
Mm.
And that to me has been very interesting because it merged, right? Just last year, we were blessed to visit Mexico City with my in-laws, and I took them to Lady of Guadalupe's cathedral, and that's built where allegedly she appeared and to the indigenous people, and this miracle happened. And they were shocked because we saw a group of indigenous people doing their traditional dances to walk into the cathedral. And my in-laws were like, how is it possible, right? Like Catholics like came and killed them and did this and did that. And I was like, well, it's because we were able to merge a little bit of both because of the symbolism. Lady of Guadalupe
Mhm.
is a huge thing for us because we saw her as this pregnant woman. We have an indigenous goddess that looked like her who was also pregnant. Like all those connections that one help people understand, but two also helped us adapt to a certain degree. And I don't want to be dismissive. There was still violence. There was still a lot of things that shouldn't have happened. But it's just a different experience than it happened like in the US, for example. I always share when I moved here and learned about reservations. I like the
Mm.
concept was just so foreign to me. And then one of my friends explained it, and she asked like, well, if you don't know reservations, then what did you guys do with your indigenous people? And I was like, we married them. Like we mixed. And that's why I have this lovely color that tans and doesn't burn like a lobster. So it's just a very different experience. I mean, there's still indigenous groups that are very high in the mountains that didn't want to combine and that preserve their traditions and a lot of their way of living and dress and stuff, which I am very grateful for because I'm still learning from them. But it was just very interesting because I feel that combination prepare me to at some point, and that studying to at some point then meet the missionaries, learn the lessons, have questions. I actually had the opportunity, so I served a mission in Mexico City. I grew up in Tijuana, and there was a point in my mission. I feel like a lot of us went through that. They were like, we can't do this anymore for whatever reason it is.
Mhm.
The people not baptizing, the lessons, even questioning your own faith. But in my case, I was just struggling a lot with understanding how much it was actually preaching the gospel and how much I was contributing to expand this vision of a white man in
Mm.
my own world. But what helped me was a missionary who will remain anonymous because I'm not sure how.
But before you go into
Yes.
that story, the missionary, can you say that again of what that conflict was
Yeah.
about sharing this story in your homeland of a white man in your home? Say that one more time to make sure that we don't lose that.
Yeah, and is to be clear, it's a question that I still deal with today, 15 years after my conversion. In Mexico, even if people understand it or not, there's still a lot of colorism. And one of the reasons that Catholicism was able to make its way in, and I feel the LDS Church was able to make its way in through missionaries, it's because of the white missionaries coming to our countries. There's still, especially in communities where there's a lot of need, this understanding that, oh, it comes from a white person who is rich and powerful and this like almighty person, then it must be true. And when I am sharing that message and studying it, and you have also to consider that I was baptized December 2010 and then went on my mission February 2013. So I had only been a
Mm.
member of the church for 2 to 3 years, right? I hadn't studied in depth as many other people that went to seminary and had other experiences. But for me to say how much is what I believe because a figure of authority told me this, how much is what I believe because I got a testimony of it, and how much do I believe because I was in a time of need in my life. And I really wanted the people that I was teaching to accept the gospel because they had a testimony, not because I had lighter skin than other Mexicans, not because my companion was white, not because this was an open door to then marry a white missionary and make it to the US, which
Hmm.
for some people it's their experience, but also not because we were catching them in a vulnerable state in which they had lost a loved one, which unfortunately, and I say this with the utmost respect, is something that I was taught. Like if you find someone that just lost a loved one or went through a divorce or all this like big emotional events in their life, then that's the right time for them to find the gospel. And I understand the need for love and the presence of God in our lives, but I also didn't want to be someone who exploited those moments in order to extend the reach of the gospel. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's you're tackling so many complex ideas. It is not easy to be a person of your background to just accept everything as somebody who, let's say, has like pioneer heritage, which I think is something I know you're gonna talk
Yeah.
about later. But you know what? I forgot that you are from Tijuana, and this may come as a shock to you because I I am Polynesian and I'm so proud to be Polynesian. And I've been to many temples, but I think my favorite temple is the Tijuana temple. I went there for the open house, and it was the first time I ever been to Mexico. And you know, like Liv, hearing about your story, especially going that part when you mentioned about like the sprinkling of Catholic, I think like that's what stands out to me about that temple is there is a sprinkling of Catholicism
Yep.
with the architecture of that temple, and not just that. When you go like one of the typical temple designs is the circle within the square, but they didn't do the circle within the square motif. They did like a traditional I don't know if the word is mesa, but like a Mexican architecture motif all throughout. But that's not the part that stood out to me the most. Wasn't until I was inside the temple and I looked at the paintings in there. They used different paintings than you would find here in the U.S. There are some are repeats, but they use a lot of the paintings that have Jesus with the glow, the behind the head, which is very Catholic.
Yep.
And as I was passing through there, I was like, why would they do? Oh, because this is what the people are familiar with. This is the Jesus that they grew up seeing in the house. If they grew up in a Catholic Mexican Catholic household. So I think it's kind of interesting to hear that your story and the Tijuana temple are, I don't want to say are one and the same, but you hold a lot of similarities together with the temple.
Yeah, when I saw the temple, I honestly thought it looked like a cathedral.
Hmm.
Which is, it's wild because the reference of a temple that I had was the San Diego temple, which looks like Elsa's castle.
Yes.
So I went from Frozen to cathedral. It's and the other temples in Mexico actually resemble the pyramids. And like
Hmm.
the shapes and cracks on the sides all look more like pyramids. And then another like fun fact about history in Mexico, and it's probably similar in other Central and South American countries. Wherever you find City Hall, there's usually a cathedral either next or across the street from it,
Hmm.
and there's like, according to my statistics, 99% chance there underneath is remainings of an indigenous temple, because
Mm.
that's how they would come toward that temple, build a church, and then put the government right next to it so that people know these are the two figures that hold the authority. And people need to understand, sometimes I get judged because I wear a cross, and I wore a cross since becoming a member, even before it was cool. And or I do this still, which is like the sign of the cross, or I just have expressions that are still very Catholic. But people need to understand that it's not just years of my life. It's hundreds of years of my family's legacy and the connection that I have to my family. And I feel like family is also a concept that it it transitions easily from Mexican culture to LDS culture, but for us it goes even deeper, right? Like food is family for us. Food is love, is showing care. Holidays, Day of the Dead, like there are a lot of traditions, and for me to give up all of my Catholicism would be to give up my family. And I
Mm.
can't, if I'm part of a church that one of the big advertising things is that families are eternal, I can't just cut them all and what we believe in. Right now, as you mentioned, I have two kids. One of them, Elijah, just went through a very big surgery at only 2 months old. And every single day, my dad would wake up, come get him from my room, and say El Credo. It's like, I don't know the names of prayers in English, but it's just like, I believe in one
The,
God, yada, 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 yada,
the
every
creed.
single
Yes.
day, the creed with him, every single day. And then he would pray to one of the saints, and he wants to buy this kidney gold little tokens that he wants to take and offer to the Virgin and to Lady of Guadalupe. And I was like, I can't go and tell my dad, you can't exercise your faith like this. I can't,
Mm.
because he's doing what he can to have his prayers be heard and for our son to have a miracle. And it's also very interesting because in Catholicism, there's this concept called mandas, which is a promise that you make. And my whole conscious life, I thought that is very transactional. God doesn't charge you for miracles, because you will promise things like, oh, if my loved one's cancer goes away, I'll walk barefoot all the way to this temple, or I'll
Mm.
donate this much money, or I'll do this or that. 2 days before my son's surgery, I just had this huge impression that I had to take him to see Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. And I
Wow.
was like, no, we don't do that. I don't believe in those promises anymore. That's not an LDS thing. And I tried to get rid of that feeling, and I just couldn't. And then I sat down with my mom, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm conflicted because I'm trying, as crazy and as wild and as vocal as I am, I'm trying to be a good Mormon girl. And this is like a tradition of my parents that I should let go of. And then my mom said, well, what if it's just a way of Heavenly Father to tell you, hey, if it all goes well, I just want you to make sure that he knows where he comes from. Because your faith comes from Catholicism. You learn to exercise faith through Catholicism, through our example, through what we did. So that built the basis for who you are now. And I was like, you know what? That I can live with. And we've made that promise that once things are better, that we'll take him and we'll take it as a family trip. And oddly enough, that's the area in which I serve my mission.
Wow.
So it will also allow me to, I don't know how many nuns I converted. I hope a lot. But it will allow me to show him that. And this actually takes me back to that point of that missionary. So when I was on my mission, they sent me, you know, that paper that you fill out with like, oh, we met with this person and taught this lesson and like the
Oh yeah.
progress of the
Yeah, the progress
investigator.
report kind of thing. Yeah.
They sent me mine. And again, I don't know if it was allowed or not, but I was ready to give up. And one of the notes on the back said, we've taught her everything that we can. We don't know what else to teach her. She's ready, but she's not ready. And when I read that, I was like, my brain is convinced. My brain had studied enough when I was researching the church. I studied the geography, the history, the this, the that, everything. And I was like, it makes sense. But I can't get baptized right now. I just don't feel it. And then I had my moment and with the column of light in which I knew I had to be baptized and I did it. And I don't think at that point it hit me the challenges that I was going to have as a woman, as a queer person, and as a person of color in the church. I just knew that it was right. But the more I started to learn, the more I started to get involved, then it's like, oh, I have to carve a space within this. I was always a very tomboy person. This lipstick, I don't know when it happened. Like now people tell me like, "Oh, Liv, red lipstick is your signature." I was like, "Yes, it happened at some point in my adulthood." Before that, my mom would bribe me for me to do my makeup to go to high school. Like that's how
Wow.
bad it was. And I hated that in Mexico in public schools you have to wear uniforms. So I had to wear a skirt. I couldn't wear pants. But anyway, I was tomboy. And then I become a member of the church. It's like, oh, I have to wear skirts. I have to be more feminine and I have to do this and that. And people don't understand how challenging it will be as someone who's the first convert in her family, who has never liked to wear skirts or dresses or anything like that, to then go to her parents who are not super well off and tell them, hey, I need skirts to go to church. I need a dress to a church that they don't even go to. And now
Right.
I remember experience I had. I went to church. I was very happy. I had my one of like three dresses that my mom managed to get for me. And then this sister, I was going to say the prayer, and she tells me, you can't say the prayer. And I'm like, why? It's like, because you're not wearing nylons. And I was like,
Yep.
what? Like, yes, it's Sunday best, and you need to wear nylons. And then I was like, is that like a rule? And then my attorney brain like would kick in. And I was like, what are you talking about? There's no rule about it. No, we have to be our best. And then I started paying more attention and realizing, oh, it's true. All the sisters that teach wear nylons. The men, they would not let, and I'm not gonna say which word because I don't want to get them in trouble. Like if they don't wear a white shirt, you can't pass the sacrament or bless it. If you don't wear formal shoes, like no sneakers, no, it didn't matter if they were clean and good shape or anything like that.
Hmm.
You had to like abide by those things. Now imagine my shock when I moved to the US and it's like people almost in sweatpants sometimes at church. I was like, no, this is a sin. Your your sacrament is not going to be as valid because because I went from like one extreme to the other, right? I'll never forget, my leadership back home was very strict about Sunday. You had to stay all day in your Sunday clothes. It
Mm.
was unimaginable to do your visits and not be wearing Sunday clothes. It didn't matter if they're wearing on a Sunday. You
Mm.
like if you were on a Monday, Tuesday, whatever. Oh, actually, you couldn't do it on a Monday because you had to do family home evening. Even if your family were not members, you had to find a family to do it. And we don't have YSA wards, so it
Mhm.
was harder. And then I come here, and I remember one time my bishop at the YSA ward is like, "Oh, we're gonna have what is it called? The game with the ball that it's not soccer. Super Bowl. Like
Oh.
we're gonna have a Super Bowl party at my house." And I was like, I need to write a letter. I need to let someone know that the bishop and it goes my Catholic again, like, forgive him, Father, because he doesn't know what he's doing. And it's just so like it was an interesting transition because I thought I had already reached like, okay, I've worked so hard, I became a good member, and then I come here and the rules changed. And I know I understand now, 15 years later, a lot of it is culture and the vibe and all this and that. But it's hard because as a former Catholic, we're committed to like our rules and expectations, even our prayers, right? They're always the same. The rosary is like 100 times the same thing, and it just keeps twisting. And I also want to circle back, and I'm sorry, sometimes I ramble a little bit to my mission. So when I say yes to becoming a member of the church, and I was a person that used to drink coffee and used to smoke and used to drink, and I tell people that I have a testimony of every single commandment. That let's just
Mhm.
put it that way.
Mm.
And I said no. Like I cut a lot of things, right? Like I stopped drinking coffee, I stopped smoking, I stopped trying recreational stuff. I started living the law of chastity. In the moment, I don't know if it was my ADHD brain or if it was my need for acceptance and belonging or my testimony or what. It was easy. It was like, yes, cold turkey. We're changing. Start over.
Wow.
When I went on my mission and I started having to teach queer people about the church, and then it's like it's something that I didn't even fully understand what it was to be queer for myself, right? And then,
Mm.
but while I was teaching, I was like, this is hurtful. And, or how can I tell someone that you belong when this is what you're reading on the scriptures, or this is what you're reading in this little pamphlet that I'm giving you? How can I tell you don't drink coffee when coffee is one of the cheapest things you can drink to stay awake, to work 14 hours, to be able to provide for your family? How can I tell you? And I understand this one might be a little sensitive with tithing, right? Like, I understand the concept of tithing, I understand the blessings of tithing. But when you see poverty at the level that we can see it in countries outside of the US, how do you tell someone you're going to get blessings someday when your kids are hungry today, when they're crying for food today? And for me to tell you, give that 10% that could buy milk or bread or like whatever it is your children need, give it to the church. And it's, I I still struggle. Like it's hard because I don't struggle with the concept of tithing. I struggle with navigating my position of privilege. I am Mexican and I
Ah.
am queer and I am a person of color, but I'm also immensely blessed in the position that I am today. I am married to a man who understands me, who trusts me when I go on weekend getaways with the lesbians or out to dinner. He trusts me because we have very clear boundaries and we understand like our dynamic and everything. But I know that's a position of privilege that not a lot of people are blessed with. Even when I was on my mission, I had to teach. I was like the bridge, right? I would help the American missionaries understand the needs of the Mexican people, and like, well, not everyone has a phone in their house. Not
Hmm.
everyone can take a warm shower. Not everyone can choose a different meal every day. I remember one time I told one of my companions, when we go with this family, you just watch what they do and follow what they do. And I remember they served the meal, and there were no utensils. And it was a very humble family, and it was like, grab your tortilla, and that's your fork and your knife and your plate and your napkin. And the sister is like, I can't eat like that. And
Hmm.
I was like, oh, you better eat like that, because if not, that tortilla is gonna be on your face, girl. But it's I it's hard, especially I was younger. Like in that moment, maybe I judged, maybe I thought things that I shouldn't have. But I think we should do better at understanding what's outside of our little bubble. Call it Utah, call it US, call it whatever it is. A lot of times we want and expect the church to change so many things, and we forget that the church is present in a lot of places where they're not at the same advancement or situation that we currently are. Like, I have friends that live in countries that just by saying they're queer or having a flag or whatever, their lives will be at risk. And I know, especially with things how they are right now in the US, could also be the situation here. But think that 100 times. Think that about your parents feeling they can still believing in corporal punishment, and like, I was having a conversation with my mom, and she was like, "Oh, I've never seen you spank your kids." I was like, "No, I won't spank them." She was like, "Oh, well, you're not traumatized." And what came out of my mouth was like, "Well, yeah, you only spanked me like 2 or 3 times, and I deserved it every time." And as soon as I said that, I was like, wait a second. I was somehow convinced that I deserved to be hit. Like, ah, no. Like, there's a lot that goes into like cultural, and of course, luckily, like after many hours of therapy and medications and stuff, I am not traumatized by it.
Uh,
But we are the generation that is breaking cycles, and that it's learning from what our parents went through without justifying it, but learning from those experiences and trying to build upon that. As much as I was talking about Matthew and how he is understanding and loving, and I'm grateful for that, but he's also a person that's very different from me. We were driving through southern Utah.
Matthew is your
Oh, Matthew's
husband.
my husband. Yes. Yeah, Matthew's my husband, the one and only dinosaur lover and lives lover. And we were driving through southern Utah, and we stopped at this spot, and he's like, "Oh yeah, my ancestor built this fort because Brigham Young told him to build it," and blah blah blah. And I was like, "Oh, like I'm married into LDS royalty." Like, or one time we were um teaching in primary, and I think it's the song Book of Mormon Stories that
Yep.
blah, blah, blah. One of his ancestors wrote it, and
Mm.
there's like a couple of songs and stories and stuff, and then like you have that right on one side, and then on the other side you have Liv the Rebel, who like has said things that might not be super appropriate, and got on stage with the Relief Society presidency and said yes, and I'm a queer and this is my life, and started a conversation about belonging. But those two parts, even being so different, he has been open and willing to learn. We were
Wow.
having a conversation about how before me, he had never met a trans person. I think he had, but he didn't know. And now he knows like 5 to 10 trans people, and like gets along with them and plays games and stuff. And he's like, yeah, I don't even think I had LGBTQ friends. And I was like, you had a couple family members. I've clocked them, but you didn't know, and that's okay. And just something that I really admire about him, that I wish more people had that willingness, is to just be open and learn, right? And recognize, oh, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. He was shocked when I told him it's not Montezuma, it's Moctezuma with a
Mm.
C. And he was like, no, all my history books said Montezuma. And I'm like, yeah, all your American history books said Montezuma.
It's not your history.
Yeah, but it's my history. So it's Moctezuma. And then it was really funny because that knowledge expanded through the family, and a family member was like, no, I found this article from like Cambridge or whatever that says both are acceptable. And I was like, yeah, that's because we gave up. We got tired of correcting people, and we were like, okay, Americans, you can't say Moctezuma, say whatever you want, but just say the name. But it has been interesting, right? Just learning from the different perspectives, and understanding that as much as he loves me, as much as he spends times with me, as he has seen me cry when my heart is broken because of a policy change or because of a comment from a leader, he will never fully understand what I go through and how things impact me. I've been in the US since 2015. I speak English fluently, but still, this will never be my language. The passion and the flavor of a te amo will never feel like an I love you to me. Seeing my
Mm.
kids celebrating 4th of July will never feel like seeing them dress up for September 16, which is Mexico's independence. Preparing dinner for the holidays, like a conversation that we've constantly had is, there are a lot of things that are given and that I've decided to sacrifice to be here and to raise my family here for many reasons that we don't have time to discuss. But it's still not my world. But I am blessed to be able to build our world inside our house. Our family, our home is this little world in which you can see a unicorn nutcracker, and then you can see a dinosaur nutcracker for Christmas, and then you'll see a Katrina one, a sugar skull one, because that's how we merge and blend and learn. And I want my kids to be able to remember and know where they come from. And I know we're probably also the first generation that is of queer parents in the LDS church,
Mm.
where I talk a lot with parents of queer or LGBTQ kids, but I don't talk a lot, and we don't hear a lot about the voices of those of us that we are the queer ones. But now we're having to make decisions for our children. Do I baptize my kid or not? Do I bless them or not? Do I take them? How do I explain to my child? And again, I'm speaking from a position of privilege in which I'm married to a man, and we both hold temple recommends and have callings and stuff. There are other situations in which it might not be as easy, so to speak, but the conversations still have to happen, because you don't know what your kids are gonna hear. You don't even know what you're gonna hear next Sunday.
Mm.
I've heard people say, "Oh, yes, you want to." I talk a lot. Sorry. That's
Yeah. I I there's just so much that you're saying, Liv, that like I hope that our listeners can take the time to listen to it again, because as a person who comes from a culture outside the U.S., there's just so many things that you say, like, I feel that. Like, I know what that specific feeling feels like. And so much of what you shared, it's almost like this could be on a podcast that has nothing to do with being queer and in the church. It could be just like, here's a story of a Mexican woman who's joined the church, because now I've grown so much in perspective of like how many Latin American women that may be having this dissonance with their upbringing. And so what I want to draw attention to now is, I think, like, I'd love to know a little bit more about being queer and in the church, because, like, how do I say this? Like, you brought up a lot of really hard things for you, and yet you're staying in this church, like, regardless of like the traditions that you want to hold on to, regardless of some things that like that didn't make sense when you moved to the U.S. Like, you have in my brain has been keeping track, like, of these are all the reasons why it would be okay for me to leave the church, if I like these are all, like, if when you add them all together, if Liv left the church for the total these reasons, I like, it wouldn't surprise me, because that's a lot of reasons. But then you add the queer one, I was just like, how do you make that work on top of all that? And I think you're already starting to talk about like the queer parenting and things like that. How do you fit that label in, and what was that like being a queer person in Mexico for you?
I I might sound corny, but I just saw it. Um, and it's gonna make more sense. I've left. I've left at times. I call them my Mormon vacations, and I feel that everyone deserves to unplug once in a while. There have been moments, months in which I've said, Enough. I can't take it anymore. I can't do it anymore. I'm tired of being strong. I'm tired of having to justify and explain myself because I have to do it to both sides, right? I have to do it to the LGBTQ people who have left the church or have never been part of the church, to explain why do I stay, and then I have to carve my space within the LDS space of how proof that I'm faithful enough. That part I would say it's a little bit easier because I'm brown in the US. I'm used to having to prove and work harder than everyone else to prove that I'm at the same level than an average person. And that's just a cultural thing. If you've heard the news, you've probably heard people justify, oh, DEI and that people don't deserve their jobs and blah, blah. I feel that. Imposter syndrome, it's a thing. Um, and it's something that I've been working on and that has helped me stay, is to know where to place the responsibility. I don't experience imposter syndrome. I experience reactions to a system that has conditioned me to believe that I'm not enough. So it's not my fault. It's the fault of those that instead of getting to know me, instead of getting to know my faith, instead of getting to know my family, they judge and make assumptions. That they see a rainbow shirt and assume, oh, she's not very faithful. Oh, she's gonna leave her husband at some point for a woman. Oh, she's not really gay. She's just pretending. I don't know who would pretend. Well, I mean, there are certain cases of people even pretending to be other things, right? I guess it happens. But I stay because, in many ways, Heavenly Father has let me know that this is my place. I can't tell you or promise that this is going to be my place forever, but among all the questions that I've had in my life, I've never questioned the existence of Heavenly Father, the existence of Jesus. I've never questioned that they love me. I've never questioned that they're there for me, even in the darkest moments. I've questioned my strength. I've questioned my ability to hear them. And I've questioned the explanations that people give to things that happen in my life. Since November 15, when my son was born, we've been in and out of hospitals more than I wanted. With him, with my other son, with myself. And it's been rough. And just last week that I was sick again, I remember telling my father-in-law, who's one of the most faithful people in my immediate family, I was like, I'm tired. I just want a weekend in which I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to worry about medications. I don't have to worry about this and this and that. And he told me, he said, I understand. And honestly, Iese, I'm so grateful he said that instead of, this is a trial that you need to push through and blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah, and endure until
The
the end.
conditioning. Yeah.
Because especially, and my in-laws are part of the group that has been learning what it is like to be a queer person in the church through my eyes, right? There are other queer members in our family that maybe have left and have decided not to stay, and I respect that. But for me, I just, at this point in my life, can't imagine life without the church. Now, that looks different for me than it might look for someone else. I might not be there every Sunday. I might not be there for the 2 hours. I do my best to do fulfill my calling, which honestly is the best calling ever because I'm a compassionate service person. So I'm like, helping people, delivering food, heck yeah, that's my thing. Um, but it also gives me what I call my own ministry to help others understand and prepare. You would not believe how many people I've met either in my ward or even during my mission throughout this time that have come to me and say, "Hey, I heard your story and it helped me understand my daughter better. I heard your story and it helped me come out." And I'm not trying to like, I'm not a saint by any means or anything like that. I feel, and this is one of the legacies from Catholic Church, you're either a saint or you're in hell, right? There's no like in
Mm.
between. But at the end of the day, we're just humans, and part of loving one another is being there for each other. And how are you going to build trust with someone that you don't see that human side of them? I I feel the voices of people leaving can be very loud. The voices of people staying and being in same gender marriages or transitioning can also be very loud. I'm loud all the time, but I think it's also important for people to know that a mixed orientation marriage is possible, but it's not, in my opinion, neither, it's not a cure. It didn't make me straight. It didn't make me look less at attractive women, especially when I'm watching movies. It didn't make me think Gal Gadot is any less attractive. It didn't make me love going shopping and having brunch with the girls because that's not the kind of person that I am. A mixed orientation marriage allowed me to build a family that I saw through an answer to my prayers.
Wow.
That is what happened. For me, that is my experience, but it's also something that requires work every single day. And I am also very aware that if something were to happen tomorrow and Matthew and I were to decide, you know what, this is no longer working for us, I know that people would assume that is because of my orientation. And I can assure you there's a list, not a very long list, but a list of other reasons. But people just make those assumptions, right? Like, oh, Liv would look a little sad today. It's probably because she's married to a man and now dating a woman, and she wanted to marry a woman. I'm like, yes, with the time that you've known me, do you really think that I can be forced into marrying someone? Like,
Yeah. Against your will, I'm gonna have to think about that one.
yeah, like, and it's also part of that generational change, right? Like, I do understand that a generation or two before us, people, that's what they were being told by their bishops.
Yeah.
Just get married to a faithful woman and you'll be straight and this thought will go away. Just get married to a faithful priesthood holder. And honestly, beyond that, and this is why I want people to understand. A lot of times we think it's a queer problem, right? Oh, they went into a marriage and there was no love because one of them was queer. This was actually a problem with a lot of marriages, one or two generations. We had authorities saying soulmates don't exist and any worthy woman and worthy man can build a family. And maybe a lot of families were happy and lived like that. That's not the kind of marriage that I would have liked. I want a marriage
Mm.
with passion. I want a marriage in which I wake up and I'm happy to see my partner right next to me. And like just today, my mom was telling me, she's like, "Oh, you do a lot to like make sure that not only the things you like are fulfilled, but you find places that Matthew likes, you find restaurants that he likes." I'm like, "Yeah, because we're a partnership, and we're if we're not in a partnership, then we're gonna fall out of love." And that boat has to be built every single day. When I joke that my parents have been married for 100 years, they've been married for like almost 50 years. Like, I know without a doubt that my mom was my dad's first love. I can't say the same about my mom, but at least for my dad, like, he fell in love with her when he was 15 years old, and they've been together since then. And you see them today holding hands and kissing each other. And every single person, queer, straight, bi, trans, whomever, deserves that exact type of love. If I hadn't found it in a man, I wouldn't be married to a man. As simple as that. Now, if Matthew were to die or something happened, I don't know if I could marry another man. I feel like I already did my I fulfilled my quota with one, could seal in the temple, everything, da da da. No, but it's not.
You
I
aren't
joke
planning anything, are you? You're not. There's no agenda to remove him from the picture anytime soon. Now that you've got
for
that
for
secured.
legal purposes. Allegedly, if that were to happen.
I,
No,
I,
I
let me just say really fast before you continue. It's just like everything that you're saying is hitting me deeper than usual. This is I've never. I guess this is my first time sharing this on the podcast. I've been in a relationship for over a year, and it's just recently come to an end. And so I'm at the point of leaving a relationship and just like looking at the future, like, oh my gosh, what does that look for like for me as a gay member of the church, as a person of color? And like my dad's like, you need to find a musician, you need some find somebody. I'm like, how, who? Like, I gotta find somebody who's gay, active in the church, and is a musician and understands my spirituality. And like, I'm just like, Dad, you're not just asking for a unicorn. You're asking me to find a unicorn that's the color purple with sparkles. Like, it's just like it's like so hard. And but that, what you're sharing here is just so like it's just so honest about like of what you've been enjoying in your relationship, about the passion that you folks have for each other, that like if you wouldn't be with Matthew unless you were getting those needs met. And it's inspiring to me that you found that. And like although I'm going through the mourning of a relationship, like this is the first time I've actually felt some hope that like that a queer person in the church can find that. So I just wanted to make sure that I was transparent not only with you and our audience, but just like really like that means a lot to me. Like if that wasn't for if that message was for anybody, that one was specifically for me, and I'm really glad that you shared that, Liv.
and I know it can be cliche to say like your person is out there. It's gonna happen. But that's how it happened for me. Like, I actually saw the post about your breakup and I was very hurt that I didn't know, but that's okay. We're not gonna go over that today. Um, I went through abusive relationships in which in one in particular I ended up in the hospital, and I
Oh.
always said before that I was like, how can an educated person end up in that sort of relationship? And then boom, it was me. I was a person who had a law degree and ended up being beaten up by her partner and justifying it. And then it goes back to that believing, right? Of like, I deserve it. I did something that I earned it. And I don't deserve a good kind of love. I don't deserve a gentle kind of love. I don't deserve someone who takes care of me one time someone asked me if I knew the moment, if I could pinpoint the moment in which I knew Matthew was the person. And I can, 100%, even with my ADHD brain. We were at our first apartment, which used to be my apartment with my roommates, and I had to grab something from like a very top shelf. And we go back to the point that I'm not very tall. I'm 5'2". And I got a chair and got on the chair and then got on the counter to reach that item. And the whole time Matthew's just looking at me. And then when I'm climbing down, he says, "You do know I'm taller than you, right?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, that means you don't have to go through all of that. I can get it for you." And it was not just the fact that he offered, it was the fact that for the first time in my life, I knew I could ask him for help, and that didn't make me weaker. That didn't
Wow.
mean that I couldn't do it by myself. It just meant that now I had someone on my corner that could do things with me and take some of the load off my shoulder. And I think that also goes back to being a Mexican daughter. Expectations, when I see parents here, no judgment. This is just a cultural difference. When I see parents, like, I'm taking my kid to college and I have to furnish their room and buy all their stuff, I'm like, what? Like, why? Like, I was in sixth grade in charge of all my documents, birth certificate, social security numbers, vaccination records. I had to find the school that I had to go to. I had to apply for it, go keep track of the testing, like do all of these things. One, because of the situation my parents were going through with health problems and financial problems, but also just because they saw my brain and they were like, "You're capable of doing this," right? That's not to say my parents didn't support me or weren't there for me or anything, but the expectations are just different. I went to college full time while working at a law firm full time, and that is not exception. That is just the expectation. Like, I don't know any of my friends going through college that didn't have a full load of classes and full time work.
Right.
And either if it was in an internship or an actual job to pay for their schooling. So when I come here and it's like so different, and but it's also I live with my parents all the way through college, and they knew I wasn't gonna move out until I was getting married. But I was a rebel and I did move and blah blah. But going back to
um,
love, and I wanna kind of
that's actually close with this. Then I think if we're gonna go back to love, there's no better way to like end a podcast than on that topic. Yeah, why don't you wrap this all together, Liv, with your thoughts on like it could be on love. Like I think love, the church, your culture, your identity, like all that. How, like share your final thoughts about that, and how you make it work, and what any parting thoughts you have for us.
you just read my mind because I was gonna say that I wanted to close with this. I just had a conversation today with my parents in which I told them I learned what love looked like from seeing you. And that was the model that I had. And as I grew up and I understood and noticed more things, I not only learned what love looked like, but I also started to separate. These are the things that I do want in my future. These are the things that I don't want in my future because nobody is perfect, right? My parents only went to elementary school. They're not highly educated people with accolades or anything, but they're honest people, they're hardworking people, and they're people that gave everything for their family. Now that I'm building my own family, when I want to give up, I always remind myself of that. My parents, without the means, without support, without loving families, put us through college. Without doing all of those things, helped me go through my conversion. Without going through all of those things, understood who I am and constantly ask how they can support me. Then, if I have twice as many of those opportunities twice as many that understanding, then I have double the commitment to my family. And my core family is my two kids, my two dogs, and my husband. But in reality, my family is the whole world because we all have the same Heavenly Father. We all have the same Heavenly Mother, even if we don't talk as much about her as we should. And we all have the same Big Brother. And like any Big Brother, sometimes what he says might annoy us, might not sit completely well with us, but he's still our Big Brother. And we're still those little brothers giving trouble, little siblings giving trouble and speaking up and talking back. But the reality is, there's nothing that can break the bond of love that unites us. It's universal, it's eternal, it goes beyond our skin color, it goes beyond our accent, our experiences, our own lives, our queerness. And the more we understand that, the more we'll actually be able to be more like Christ and to understand that we can love and respect an institution that is providing us organization, the organizational part. But the actual church, as said in the scriptures, is built by us upon the rock of Christ.
Hmm.
That's it.
That's it. Okay. That's it. Okay. Liv, what a solid way to end it. I love that, like, so many of the things that you brought today are some perspectives that I know are really going to push up against a lot of how we view things in the church in a very orthodox way. It's really, I have a lot of compartments in my brain of how I organize things. A lot of things that you said, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that breaks my organization method. And I love that you unashamedly shared that with us, and that at the very end you tie it all in to remind us, like, that you've not lost sight of why you're still in the church. You're here for your family, and you're here with your culture, and you're here built upon the foundation of Jesus Christ. And I'm very grateful for you and your testimony. Thank you for being with us today, and thank you to everybody tuning in for joining us on this episode of Out and About. Take care.